The younger generation is willing to offer my full assistance. On the altar, Mu Chen's voice spread out. In response to the floating pagoda ancestor's proposal, he showed no hesitation. After all, the most important reason for his journey to the ancient sacred abyss was to obtain the eightfold pagoda. Upon hearing this, the floating pagoda ancestor nodded with satisfaction. As for Xian Luo and Moxian, their faces turned as dark as a pot bottom, filled with grim expressions. They clearly hadn't expected that despite revealing Mu Chen's identity as the Sin Child, the floating pagoda ancestor still chose to support him. If that's the case, wouldn't the eightfold pagoda eventually end up in Mu Chen's hands? Thinking of this, both Xian Luo and Moxian couldn't suppress their rising hatred. Deservedly so. On the other hand, Qingling couldn't help but sneer upon seeing this scene. If Mu Chen hadn't intervened and turned the tide, the altar would have likely been destroyed by Shi Tianyu by now. But Xian Luo and Moxian, who were too afraid to face the powerful Shi Tianyu earlier, now saw an opportunity to gain an advantage and immediately stepped forward, even attempting to smear Mu Chen with malicious intent. Such tactics were utterly detestable. Fortunately, the floating pagoda ancestor appeared to be an enlightened figure, unlike those stubborn old-timers in the clan. Qing Shuang, standing nearby, let out a quiet sigh of relief. She had already cast aside her hopes of obtaining the eightfold pagoda, so she wasn't bothered about the dispute over its ownership. Naturally, she hoped it would go to Mu Chen. I hope Mu Chen and the ancestor can join forces to defeat the heavenly demon emperor's remnant soul. Otherwise, a hint of worry appeared in Qing Shuang's beautiful eyes. Now, one of the four sacred pagodas had already been breached by the extraterritorial evil clan. If they failed here too, their mission would essentially be half a failure. And if the heavenly demon emperor's remnant soul escaped the four sacred pagodas, the consequences would be unimaginable. While Qing Shuang quietly worried, on the altar, the floating pagoda ancestors will suddenly shot out, directly pouring into Mu Chen's divine soul. His pupils immediately erupted with dazzling beams of light, as bright as stars. As the floating pagoda ancestors will entered his body, Mu Chen instantly felt an overwhelming, terrifying force surge within him. The power was so vast that, even with his current physical strength, several bloodlines cracked open quietly. Such powerful strength. Mu Chen gasped, feeling the immense power within him. Compared to his previous strength, it was like the difference between a firefly and the full moon. This made him dizzy and awestruck. The floating pagoda ancestors' will alone was so majestic. He couldn't even imagine what it would be like at the ancestors' peak. Saint Grade Heavenly Supreme, truly a title well-deserved. Next, I will borrow your body to fight the blood zombie Heavenly Demon Emperor. The floating pagoda ancestor's voice rang out in Mu Chen's mind. Mu Chen nodded. The power was so vast and formidable that with his current abilities, he couldn't possibly wield it. It was like giving a sharp blade to an infant. No matter how powerful the weapon, they wouldn't be able to use it. You old demon, I won't give you the chance to suppress me again. At the same time, the blood zombie Heavenly Demon Emperor let out a skyward roar. Demonic aura surged around him and rapidly condensed in front of him. After several breaths, it formed a black sphere the size of a human head. The sphere, resembling a black hole, seemed inconspicuous at first, but as soon as it appeared, the surrounding space collapsed as if unable to bear its weight. This was a compressed form of demonic aura at its peak. Mu Chen trembled as he stared at the demonic sphere. He had a premonition that even if he activated his strongest defense, the immortal Golden Lotus, he would still be unable to block it. Boom! The demonic sphere condensed and immediately shot out with tremendous force. The space around it completely collapsed, and the sharp space fragments were devoured by the demonic aura, intensifying its already terrifying power. This simple move held the power to annihilate the world. Facing the destructive magic ball shooting toward him, Mu Chen clasped his hands together. A floating pagoda slowly emerged between his palms, shimmering with crystal clarity. This was the holy floating pagoda within Mu Chen's body. However, at this moment, this holy floating pagoda was at a completely different level from the one in Mu Chen's hands. On the floating pagoda, a dazzling brilliance gathered, and when it appeared, it was like a crystal sun, suppressing all the light in the heavens and earth. The sacred floating pagoda trembled in Mu Chen's hand, and then the top of the pagoda swayed. Immediately, a burst of crystal radiance shot out, containing an incredibly mysterious power. The radiance shot out, directly colliding with the oncoming demon ball. The anticipated earth-shattering explosion did not occur. When the crystal radiance touched the demon ball, it immediately transformed into light, enveloping it. As the radiance spread, the black ball rapidly dimmed at a visible speed, eventually shattering and quickly disappearing. Such powerful sealing power! Mu Chen was stunned by this scene. The sealing power activated by the floating pagoda ancestor was ridiculously strong. Roar! Seeing the attack thwarted, the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor couldn't help but let out a furious roar. From Shi Tianyou's body, countless black hairs sprouted, and then he suddenly transformed into numerous afterimages, shooting out in all directions. Sharp claws, about an inch long, appeared on his fingertips, gleaming with a ghostly light. Their sharpness was such that even a heavenly supreme would not dare to engage lightly. The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor was best at close combat, so now he tried to get close to Mu Chen, intending to suppress the floating pagoda ancestor with his formidable melee capabilities. However, the floating pagoda ancestor did not give him this opportunity. Mu Chen swiftly retreated, and the floating pagoda expanded in the wind, growing to about 10,000 feet, then pressed down on the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor. Clang! Clang! The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor couldn't dodge in time, and could only meet the pagoda with his iron fists, slamming them fiercely against the floating pagoda. The sound of earth-shaking blows rang out, but with each strike he made to push the pagoda back, he too suffered immense recoil, causing his body to stagger backward repeatedly. After several such exchanges, the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor grew impatient, howling to the sky. He suddenly broke one of his own arms and opened his mouth to spit out a blazing black flame, enveloping his arm in it. Zombie demon spear. The flames burned fiercely, and after a few breaths, the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor reached into the flames, pulling out a black bone spear. The spear emanated a thick, intense bloody aura. Clang! Holding the black bone spear, the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor once again swung it fiercely at the descending floating pagoda. This time, the pagoda was knocked back, and a deep mark appeared on its incredibly sturdy body. Humph! Seeing this, the floating pagoda ancestor snorted coldly. He then manipulated Mu Chen's body, swiftly forming hand seals. Immediately, the entire altar trembled violently. Buzz! Buzz! The altar shook, and suddenly cracks appeared within it. Several beams of light shot out from the cracks and quickly gathered. As the light flashed, a copper mirror, sparkling with starlight, appeared in midair. The copper mirror was extremely ancient, covered in mottled, age marks. Its surface was deep and gave an unfathomable feeling. The only imperfection was that one corner of the mirror was missing, making it appear imperfect. Buzz! As the copper mirror appeared, the sacred floating pagoda also trembled violently, erupting with boundless divine radiance. However, this radiance did not head toward the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor. Instead, it rushed toward the copper mirror. Whoosh! The divine radiance entered the copper mirror, and after a breath, the mirror shook. Suddenly, a massive divine radiance, tens of thousands of feet long, erupted, surrounded by countless ancient symbols, vast beyond measure. Demon Sealing Scroll. With the floating pagoda ancestor's low shout, a scroll, about 10,000 feet in length, slowly emerged from the radiance. As the scroll unfurled, it pierced through the void and appeared above the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, enveloping and surrounding him. Whoosh! Whoosh! A terrifying pulling force erupted from the scroll, slowly drawing the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor's body toward it. The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, clearly wary of the scroll, erupted with demonic aura, resisting the pull. As he fought back with all his might, his body gradually steadied. Ha ha, floating pagoda old ghost. When you broke this demon sealing mirror back then, it was no longer perfect, and now you still think you can trap me with it? The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor laughed arrogantly. As time passed, the power of the demon sealing scroll began to weaken. The floating pagoda ancestors will let out a soft sigh, saying, "What a pity." If the demon sealing mirror were complete, it wouldn't be difficult to suppress the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor today. Mu Chen's mind was focused on the demon sealing mirror in the sky. He stared at the missing section, and his heart stirred slightly. Then, with a flicker of thought, a streak of light flashed from his sleeve, floating in front of him. The streak of light contracted, transforming into a smooth copper plate. It was the mysterious copper plate that Chen had previously obtained in Gathering City. Senior, I once stumbled upon an item. Chen transmitted his thoughts. Before he could finish speaking, Chen clearly sensed a powerful surge of energy from the will of the floating pagoda ancestor. Then, he heard the ancestor's voice, filled with excitement and surprise, echoing in his mind. Is this a fragment of the demon sealing mirror? A fragment of the demon sealing mirror? When the smooth, mirror-like copper plate appeared, the floating pagoda ancestors will immediately conveyed an unmistakable surge of joy. It was clear that this unexpected discovery shocked him deeply. Chen let out a relieved smile. His prediction was indeed correct. The copper plate was a missing piece of the demon sealing mirror. With this, it seemed that the reason he had sensed this copper plate at the trading post was because it belonged to the floating pagoda ancestor, thus carrying his aura. This must have triggered the reaction from the floating pagoda tower within him. It seems you, and I truly have fate, the floating pagoda ancestor sighed. If Chen hadn't obtained this fragment of the demon sealing mirror, he might have found it difficult to deal with the remnant soul of the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor. Senior, is it possible to suppress the remnant soul of the heavenly demon emperor now? Chen asked. Enough, the floating pagoda ancestor replied decisively. Although the power of the demon sealing mirror had been weakened, the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor was merely a remnant soul, far weaker than it was in its prime. As the floating pagoda ancestor's voice faded, the copper plate shot out like a bolt of lightning, merging with the demon sealing mirror in the sky. As the light surged, the mirror's imperfections gradually healed. Buzz! Buzz! As the demon sealing mirror was restored to perfection, a series of halos suddenly radiated from its dark surface. These halos descended from the sky, all falling into the large scroll below. At the same time, the scroll erupted with chains of light, piercing through the void and wrapping around the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor's limbs. The chains were adorned with ancient runes, and it seemed that they had a special suppressing effect on the demonic aura. Once they wrapped around him, the corporeal demonic aura on the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor's body became thinner. Crash! Crash! The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor's face changed as he struggled desperately. But this time, the halo's chains remained unyielding. Demon sealing tome. Bind. The floating pagoda ancestors will called out sharply. The chains of light suddenly retracted, and the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, roaring in defiance, was gradually dragged into the demon sealing tome. The demon sealing tome floated high, vibrating constantly. A shadow appeared on the scroll, its face twisted and filled with demonic aura. Indeed, it was the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor. Damn floating pagoda old ghost! The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor roared in fury from within the scroll. He hadn't expected that, after just gaining his freedom, he would be trapped again by the floating pagoda ancestor in this demon sealing tome. Don't get too smug. Now that one of the 4 sacred pagodas has been broken, once the other 2 layers are breached, I will still escape. Chen gazed at the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, who was still struggling violently within the seal, and asked, Senior, can't we completely destroy him? From what he could see, the floating pagoda ancestor had only sealed the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor. However, this kind of seal seemed a bit risky. If there were any flaws, the demon emperor might escape once again. The floating pagoda ancestor sighed and responded, the life force of these extraterritorial evil clans is incredibly tenacious, and their demonic souls are far denser than those of beings from our great thousand worlds. To completely annihilate their souls would require a tremendous amount of power. In ancient times, most of us chose to seal them, allowing time to erode their souls. Chen suddenly realized why many of the demon emperors he encountered from the extraterritorial evil clan were sealed. However, while this method was energy efficient, it did come with its own drawbacks. Prolonged sealing led to many unforeseen complications. Nevertheless, the demonic soul of the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, after years of being sealed and suppressed, has become extremely weak. I must say, it's indeed the best time to strike, but unfortunately, my own power within this will has also been greatly depleted, and I can no longer completely eradicate it, the floating pagoda ancestor said with some regret. Wouldn't the demon sealing mirror be able to help? Chen glanced up at the demon sealing mirror in the sky. He could tell that this mirror was undoubtedly an extraordinary sacred artifact with formidable power. The floating pagoda ancestor shook his head. The demon sealing mirror has assisted me in suppressing the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor for many years, but its power has also been greatly drained. He paused for a moment before continuing. However, if we had another immortal grade supreme artifact, I could slay the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor and fulfill my wish. Immortal grade supreme artifact? Mu Chen was stunned, clearly surprised to learn that even supreme artifacts had different tiers. Supreme artifacts are possessions of the heavenly supreme, and it's not surprising you didn't know. Like the heavenly supreme, they are divided into 3 grades: immortal, celestial, and saint. The floating pagoda ancestor explained with a smile. Mu Chen nodded slightly, then fell into thought. Indeed, he did possess one such supreme artifact, though its power had been significantly depleted. But in this situation, it seemed there was no choice but to give it a try. With that thought, he clenched his hand, and light gathered within, eventually forming an ancient crystal longsword. The sword glowed with shimmering light, exuding an extraordinary aura. When the crystal sword appeared, the floating pagoda ancestors will immediately emitted a surprised exclamation. A moment later, a voice filled with astonishment rang out. "This is the Heavenly Emperor's Heavenly Emperor sword? Senior, do you recognize it?" Mu Chen was equally surprised. "How could I not? I once had some acquaintance with the Heavenly Emperor. I never imagined his sword would end up in your hands," the floating pagoda ancestor said in shock. "I was fortunate enough to inherit the Heavenly Emperor's legacy. He left this sword for me," Mu Chen explained. That guy's taste isn't bad. My Fudu clan's child is indeed worthy of his legacy," the floating pagoda ancestor chuckled, a hint of pride in his voice. "Senior, the power in this Heavenly Emperor sword is nearly exhausted. Do you think it will still be useful?" "Useful," the floating pagoda ancestor said with a grin. "The Heavenly Emperor sword is unrivaled in its dominance. It is a sacred weapon for slaying demons. Even though its power is nearly depleted, it can still unleash some of its might in my hands. It will be more than enough to deal with the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor." Mu Chen let out a sigh of relief at his words. The floating pagoda ancestors will control Mu Chen's body, making him grip the heavenly emperor sword tightly. He smiled at the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor and said, "But you'll need to hold out until then. Haha, old fool, in your current state, you can't do anything to me." The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor laughed wickedly, but soon his laughter froze as the sword in the floating pagoda ancestor's hand suddenly erupted with a blinding sword light. From that sword, he sensed an overwhelming aura of danger, an aura that was no weaker than the demon sealing mirror. "After countless years of entanglement, today I will finally eradicate you. It's truly satisfying," the floating pagoda ancestor laughed heartily before throwing his hand. The heavenly emperor's sword shot out like a streak of lightning. A sea of sword light surged, sweeping across the heavens and earth. The heavenly emperor's sword transformed into a deep, flowing sword light, mysterious and unfathomable. Carrying unimaginable power, it cleaved through the void with a single swipe. Roar! At that moment, the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, trapped in the demon sealing scroll, sensed the impending doom and immediately let out a furious roar, struggling as a massive surge of demonic aura erupted, attempting to break free. Buzz. Above, the demon sealing mirror hovered, releasing countless halos that enveloped the demon sealing scroll, reinforcing its seal. No matter how fiercely the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor struggled, escape was impossible. Whoosh! Just then, the space ahead shattered, and a sword light, resembling liquid, emerged, piercing through. This sword light was unremarkable, but it instilled a sense of dread in the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor's roar. "Disappear completely." The voice of the floating pagoda ancestor was filled with cold ruthlessness, and that streak of sword light shot out without hesitation, piercing through the struggling demonic shadow and the demon sealing tome in one strike. Ah! A shrill, miserable scream echoed, and thick demonic smoke poured out, only to be suppressed once again by the demon sealing tome. The body of the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, however, began to deflate like a punctured ball, growing weaker. His breath rapidly diminished. The blood zombie heavenly demon emperor's screams reverberated through the heavens and earth, causing the experts of the extraterritorial evil clan to turn pale. In a frenzy, they abandoned everything and fled. With the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor on the brink of being slain, they had lost all their chances. Meanwhile, the powerful beings of the Great Thousand Worlds began to ruthlessly attack the fallen enemies, encircling and blocking the remaining members of the extraterritorial evil clan. On the altar, Mu Chen looked at the rapidly dissipating aura of the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor and suddenly had an idea. He said, "Senior, has the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor been defeated?" This time, we finally dealt with him," The floating pagoda ancestor's voice carried a sense of relief. Mu Chen thought for a moment, then smiled and took out the demon-slaying order from the Palace of the Great Thousand. Senior, would it be possible for me to take a fragment of his remnant soul? According to the rules of the Palace of the Great Thousand, after slaying an extraterritorial evil clan member, one could absorb a fragment of their remnant soul into the demon-slaying order to gain demon-slaying points and increase one's rank. Killing a heavenly demon emperor would earn 10,000 demon-slaying points, making one the demon-slaying king of the Palace of the Great Thousand. Although Mu Chen didn't personally kill the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, he had contributed to his defeat, so he wanted to try and see if he could gain demon-slaying points. Oh, the demon-slaying order. Seeing the demon-slaying order that Mu Chen took out, the floating pagoda ancestor was momentarily stunned before he couldn't help but laugh. You little rascal, always thinking ahead. Haha, it's fine, it's fine. A demon-slaying king of Upper Earth Supreme. Haha, this is really interesting. I wonder what kind of expression the people in the Palace of the Great Thousand will have when they find out. With a wave of his sleeve, a streak of black mist flew out from the demon-sealing tome and entered the demon-slaying order. The demon-slaying order glowed, drawing in the black mist. Mu Chen and the floating pagoda ancestor both focused on the demon-slaying order. Under their watch, the demon-slaying order was silent for a moment before suddenly shaking. Golden light erupted from it, and the previously dark-colored order transformed into a radiant golden one. At the bottom of the token, the former low-level Demon Slayer title vanished, replaced by 3 golden characters that emanated a commanding aura. Demon-slaying king. Mu Chen stared intently at the 3 golden characters, his mouth agape. Had his attempt truly succeeded? In Sacred Abyss City, Palace of the Great Thousand. At the counter, the gray-robed elder carefully wiped a beautiful jade bottle in his hands. Suddenly, his hand trembled, and he abruptly looked up. The previously murky light in his eyes now gleamed brightly as he stared at the massive demon-slaying monument standing in the center of Sacred Abyss City. At the same moment his gaze landed on it, the enormous demon-slaying monument began to hum and vibrate. This vibration was immediately noticed by countless people across the city, who cast puzzled glances. Clearly, this was the first time they had seen the monument behave in such a way. What's going on? As many voices of confusion spread, a dazzling golden light suddenly appeared on the monument, shining from its peak like a golden sun. The golden light enveloped the entire city, and within that golden glow, countless demon slayers in Sacred Abyss City felt a faint sense of pressure. The golden light lasted for about 10 minutes before it gradually faded. As the light dispersed, all eyes turned toward the monument, and in the next instant, the previously noisy city became eerily silent. Crash! At the counter, the jade bottle in the gray-robed elder's hand slipped and fell, shattering into pieces. But the elder remained still, staring blankly at the demon-slaying monument. Crash! Crash! In the recruitment area, many demon slayers' items also fell from their hands, creating a series of crisp sounds. Their faces were all in a daze. What the hell is this? Someone muttered in a daze. In the silent city, the demon slayer monument glowed with restrained golden light. At the very top, beneath the original demon slayer King Chen Tian, a new line of golden characters appeared. Demon Slayer King, Mu Chen. Boom. The silence in the city was finally broken as a wave of astonished murmurs erupted. Clearly, the sudden appearance of a new Demon Slayer King had shocked everyone into a stupor. Most of the people in Sacred Abyss City were demon slayers from the Palace of the Great Thousand, so they understood what the title of Demon Slayer King represented. It was almost the ultimate goal of their entire lives. Becoming the Demon Slayer King meant entering the upper echelons of the Palace of the Great Thousand, gaining extraordinary status. Even in the vast world, the superpowers from all sides would show respect and courtesy to such individuals. It could be said without exaggeration that the Demon Slayer King of the Palace of the Great Thousand held a reputation equivalent to the leaders of the top superpowers. Countless demon slayers strove for this, but the required 10,000 demon slaying points felt unreachable in times of peace. While it was possible to directly ascend by slaying a heavenly demon emperor, no one had ever considered this path. The heavenly demon emperor was in existence on par with the saint-grade heavenly supreme. Whether in the extraterritorial evil clan or the Great Thousand World, the heavenly demon emperor was among the pinnacle of power. No one had the courage to set their sights on the heavenly demon emperor. And because the Demon Slayer King was so unattainable, when the Demon Slayer monument suddenly displayed an unfamiliar name as the new Demon Slayer King, The demon slayers were left in utter disbelief and shock. Who exactly is Mu Chen? Why have I never heard of him before? I don't think there's such a person among the senior demon slayers. Is that so? Could he have ascended from the intermediate or low ranks? Nonsense. To ascend like that, he'd have to have killed several demon emperors at once, right? The noise in Sacred Abyss City erupted into a cacophony, with countless people discussing and speculating. In front of the counter, the gray-robed elder also came back to his senses. He stared at the second row of golden characters, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Mu Chen? Could it be that boy the old drunkard brought here some time ago? But he just received the demon-slaying order. He's only a low-level demon slayer. Could it be? The gray-robed elder suddenly had a thought, and his expression changed slightly. To ascend from a low-level demon slayer to a demon slayer king, there was only one way: slay a heavenly demon emperor and obtain a fragment of its remnant soul. But Mu Chen was only a higher Earth Supreme. If he encountered a heavenly demon emperor, not to mention killing it, even a single breath from the emperor would probably be enough to end his life. If that's the case, there was only one possibility. Could it be that he killed one of the 4 heavenly demon emperor remnant souls sealed in the ancient sacred abyss? The gray-robed elder muttered. This was the most likely theory. If Mu Chen had obtained the assistance of one of those 4 ancestors' wills, it would be troublesome, but not impossible. If that's the case, then this kid has really been lucky. The gray-robed elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. Such a method did feel like a shortcut. If Mu Chen's identity were confirmed, then the Palace of the Great Thousand would likely have the weakest demon slayer king in its history. This matter needs to be reported to headquarters. The gray-robed elder murmured to himself. This issue was too important for him to make a decision alone, so it had to be sent back to headquarters for them to handle. After the decision was made, the gray-robed elder looked again at the demon slayer monument, staring at the golden characters in second place. He couldn't help but shake his head again. Even he had never encountered such a strange situation. Today had truly opened his eyes. While the gray-robed elder was contemplating how to handle the situation, 3 figures in a courtyard in Sacred Abyss City also looked up, staring at the golden characters on the demon slayer monument. Mu Chen? Could it be that Sin child? A silver-robed elder looked at the golden name, his expression dark. Beside him, a black-robed elder frowned deeply. Though he was reluctant to admit it, he slightly nodded. It's probably that Sin child. These 2 individuals were naturally Elder Moin and Elder Blacklight from the Futu ancient clan. How was that possible? Elder Moin said in a deep voice. He too understood just how difficult it was to become the demon-slaying king of the Palace of the Great Thousand. Elder Blacklight fell silent for a moment, then said, It's not impossible. After all, within the ancient sacred abyss, there exists the sealed remnant soul of the heavenly demon emperor. Elder Moin's expression changed. If that was the case, it would mean that Mu Chen had found the inheritance, wouldn't it? If the heavenly demon emperor's remnant soul existed, it would undoubtedly come with one of the 4 ancestors. From their estimation, there was a high chance that the inheritance Mu Chen had found was the legacy of their Futu ancestor. Could the Eightfold Pagoda really fall into Mu Chen's hands? The thought of this made both of their faces grow increasingly dark. While their expressions darkened, Elder Qing Xian, dressed in palace robes, glanced at the demon-slaying monument beside them. Her eyes held a trace of shock, clearly disturbed in her heart. He's really become the demon-slaying king. She murmured. If Mu Chen truly became the demon-slaying king of the Palace of the Great Thousand, his status would undergo a dramatic change. A fool's dream. This shortcut to advancement will never be recognized by the Palace of the Great Thousand. Moreover, a demon-slaying king with the status of an Upper Earth Supreme? If word gets out, it would disgrace the entire palace. Elder Blacklight scoffed. Elder Qing Xian glanced at him and said lightly, Elder Blacklight, your opinion doesn't matter here. It all depends on what the Palace of the Great Thousand decides. Elder Blacklight froze, then swiftly flicked his sleeve and coldly said, No matter what, we will never allow the Eightfold Pagoda to fall into the hands of that Sin child. If that happens, it will make our Futu ancient clan a laughingstock in the Great Thousand Worlds. His tone had turned sharp by the end of his words. Elder Blacklight, what do you intend to do? If you act now, it will go against the Elder's orders. Elder Qing Xian's face changed immediately, and she said harshly when she caught his meaning. You want to force my sister to break ties with the clan? Elder Moin sneered. If it really comes to that, we'll have to disregard the Elder's restrictions. I believe even the Elder will support our decision, Elder Moin said coldly. The Elder has been far too lenient with Qing Yanjing, which has allowed her to repeatedly overstep her bounds. I can't stand this any longer. That Sin child is running wild under my very nose. Elder Qin Xian's face turned pale with anger. A surge of spiritual power erupted from her body, shaking the space around her as it rushed toward Elder Blacklight and Elder Mine. Elder Qin Xian, what are you trying to do? Both Elder Blacklight and Elder Mine's faces darkened, and they quickly retreated. Powerful spiritual energy fluctuations emanated from both of them as they easily resisted Qin Xian's spiritual pressure. Elder Qin Xian, are you planning to help that Sin child? If so, your entire Qing bloodline will face punishment, Elder Mine said coldly. Qin Xian gritted her teeth, her chest heaving with rage. After a moment, her terrifying spiritual power slowly retracted. Her eyes, icy cold, locked onto the two elders. If you insist on going down this path, then the consequences are yours to bear. Let's see if the elder can protect you two idiots when my sister goes all out. With that, she said no more, flicked her sleeve, and turned away. Behind her, Elder Blacklight and Elder Mine's expressions fluctuated between gloom and indecision, but in the end, they both snorted coldly. They still didn't believe that Qing Yanjing, powerful as she was, could not be subdued if she truly went mad. After all, the entire Fudu ancient clan was there to deal with her. No matter what, they would never allow the Eightfold Pagoda to fall into the hands of that Sin child. This time, they were determined to bring the Sin child back to the clan and make him pay for his actions. Did it really happen? On the altar, Mu Chen gazed in amazement at the demon-slaying order in his hand, which was glowing with golden light. The three golden characters, Demon-Slaying King, radiated an air of authority. This result was clearly beyond his expectations. After all, he had initially just come up with this idea on a whim, testing whether the shortcut would work. Who would have thought? It actually worked. Haha, the Demon-Slaying King of Upper Earth Supreme, the will of the floating pagoda ancestor manifested beside him. He looked at the golden token in Mu Chen's hand, and a deep smile couldn't help but spread across his aged face. The palace of the Great Thousand had existed since ancient times, so the floating pagoda ancestor was well aware of the immense weight the demon-slaying kings held within it. In the silent city, the Demon Slayer monument glowed with restrained golden light. At the very top, beneath the original Demon Slayer King Qin Tian, a new line of golden characters appeared. Demon Slayer King, Mu Chen. Boom. The silence in the city was finally broken as a wave of astonished murmurs erupted. Clearly, the sudden appearance of a new Demon Slayer King had shocked everyone into a stupor. Most of the people in Sacred Abyss City were demon slayers from the Palace of the Great Thousand, so they understood what the title of Demon Slayer King represented. It was almost the ultimate goal of their entire lives. Becoming the Demon Slayer King meant entering the upper echelons of the Palace of the Great Thousand, gaining extraordinary status. Even in the vast world, the superpowers from all sides would show respect and courtesy to such individuals. It could be said without exaggeration that the Demon Slayer King of the Palace of the Great Thousand held a reputation equivalent to the leaders of the top superpowers. Countless demon slayers strove for this, but the required 10,000 demon slaying points felt unreachable in times of peace. While it was possible to directly ascend by slaying a heavenly demon emperor, no one had ever considered this path. The heavenly demon emperor was an existence on par with the saint-grade heavenly supreme. Whether in the extraterritorial evil clan or the Great Thousand World, the heavenly demon emperor was among the pinnacle of power. No one had the courage to set their sights on the heavenly demon emperor. And because the Demon Slayer King was so unattainable, when the Demon Slayer monument suddenly displayed an unfamiliar name as the new Demon Slayer King, the Demon Slayers were left in utter disbelief and shock. Who exactly is Mu Chen? Why have I never heard of him before? I don't think there's such a person among the senior Demon Slayers. Is that so? Could he have ascended from the intermediate or low ranks? Nonsense, to ascend like that. He'd have to have killed several demon emperors at once, right? The noise in Sacred Abyss City erupted into a cacophony, with countless people discussing and speculating. In front of the counter, the gray-robed elder also came back to his senses. He stared at the second row of golden characters, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Mu Chen? Could it be that boy the old drunkard brought here some time ago? But he just received the demon-slaying order. He's only a low-level demon slayer. Could it be? The gray-robed elder suddenly had a thought, and his expression changed slightly. To ascend from a low-level demon slayer to a demon slayer king, there was only one way: slay a heavenly demon emperor and obtain a fragment of its remnant soul. But Mu Chen was only a higher earth supreme. If he encountered a heavenly demon emperor, not to mention killing it, even a single breath from the emperor would probably be enough to end his life. If that's the case, there was only one possibility. Could it be that he killed one of the 4 heavenly demon emperor remnant souls sealed in the ancient sacred abyss? The gray-robed elder muttered. This was the most likely theory. If Mu Chen had obtained the assistance of one of those 4 ancestors' wills, it would be troublesome, but not impossible. If that's the case, then this kid has really been lucky. The gray-robed elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. Such a method did feel like a shortcut. If Mu Chen's identity were confirmed, then the Palace of the Great Thousand would likely have the weakest demon slayer king in its history. This matter needs to be reported to headquarters. The gray-robed elder murmured to himself. This issue was too important for him to make a decision alone, so it had to be sent back to headquarters for them to handle. After the decision was made, the gray-robed elder looked again at the demon slayer monument, staring at the golden characters in second place. He couldn't help but shake his head again. Even he had never encountered such a strange situation. Today had truly opened his eyes. While the gray-robed elder was contemplating how to handle the situation, 3 figures in a courtyard in Sacred Abyss City also looked up, staring at the golden characters on the demon slayer monument. Mu Chen? Could it be that Sin child? A silver-robed elder looked at the golden name, his expression dark. Beside him, a black-robed elder frowned deeply. Though he was reluctant to admit it, he slightly nodded. It's probably that Sin child. These 2 individuals were naturally Elder Mayin and Elder Blacklight from the Futu ancient clan. How is that possible? Elder Mayin said in a deep voice. He too understood just how difficult it was to become the demon-slaying king of the Palace of the Great Thousand. As he spoke, he raised his hand, and the Heavenly Emperor's sword transformed into a flowing beam of sword light, finally solidifying into an ancient crystal longsword, which landed in his hand. The floating pagoda ancestor handed the Heavenly Emperor's sword back to Mu Chen and said, at its peak, the Heavenly Emperor's sword was a peerless sacred artifact, comparable to a saint-grade treasure. Unfortunately, its power has been nearly exhausted, and after enduring countless battles and the erosion of time, even if it recovers in the future, it will likely regress to a mortal grade. At this point, a hint of regret appeared in his voice. After all, a saint-grade peerless sacred artifact is incredibly rare, even for a saint-grade heavenly supreme. The demon's sealing mirror in his hand, too, is merely an immortal grade artifact. Mu Chen nodded and took the Heavenly Emperor's sword. At this moment, the sword had completely dulled, its ancient blade covered in a layer of dust that could not be wiped away. Mu Chen understood that this was because the Heavenly Emperor's sword's remaining power had been almost completely depleted. Unless he broke through to the Heavenly Supreme level one day, the Heavenly Emperor's sword would never again be able to unleash its former brilliance. Don't worry. When I break through to the Heavenly Supreme, I'll make sure you see the light of day again, Mu Chen murmured as he stroked the sword's blade. Buzz. The Heavenly Emperor's sword vibrated slightly, as if emitting the faint sound of an ancient sword chant. Mu Chen put the Heavenly Emperor's sword away and then looked around. The surrounding altar had already seen the extraterritorial evil clan retreating in disarray, while the experts from the Great Thousand Worlds were relentlessly pursuing them. However, not far from the altar, several figures remained hovering in the air, their gazes continuously directed toward the altar. The 2 in the lead were Xian Luo and Moxin. Clearly, they were still unwilling to let Mu Chen obtain the inheritance of the Eightfold Pagoda from the floating pagoda ancestor. Senior, have I completed the mission? Mu Chen naturally knew the sinister intentions of these 2, so without delay, he directly asked the floating pagoda ancestor's will, hoping to quickly claim the Eightfold Pagoda. The floating pagoda ancestor's will, upon hearing this, smiled and nodded. Originally, he had only hoped to use Mu Chen to prevent the blood zombie Heavenly Demon Emperor from escaping, but Mu Chen had directly helped him erase the remnant soul of the blood zombie Heavenly Demon Emperor. Therefore, the task was as perfect as it could be. Then, what reward do you plan to give me, Senior? Mu Chen asked, without hesitation, straightforward in his approach. The floating pagoda ancestor was momentarily taken aback by Mu Chen's bluntness. Then he couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. "You're quite the pragmatic one, aren't you?" Mu Chen smiled faintly and replied, "I'm a lone wolf. Every opportunity one get is earned with my life, unlike some who rely on big backing and have everything handed to them effortlessly." The expression on the floating pagoda ancestor's aged face slightly tightened. He could tell from Mu Chen's words that the enmity between him and the floating pagoda clan ran deep. Whoosh, whoosh. From a distance, Xian Luo and Mo Xian suddenly swooped in, landing on the altar. "Junior descendants, we greet the ancestor." The two bowed respectfully, their mannerism humble to the extreme. The floating pagoda ancestor nodded in acknowledgement. Xian Luo glanced at Mu Chen, then cupped his fists toward the floating pagoda ancestor and said, "Ancestor, we carry a heavy responsibility. We must recover the eightfold pagoda that you created. For the sake of the clan's inheritance, we ask that you hand it over to us. We, the younger generations, will never forget it." "Yes, ancestor, your inheritance has been lost for countless years, causing irreparable harm to the clan. I'm sure you, too, wish for your legacy to be passed down through the generations, don't you?" Mo Xian added, speaking in a respectful tone. Mu Chen's face darkened, but his eyes glinted with cold light. These two had fled like rats when facing the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, and now that the danger had passed, they had the audacity to come and steal his spoils. These bastards, who had run off like dogs during the battle with Shirtianyu and the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor, now had the gall to come and take what was his. The floating pagoda ancestor glanced at Xian Luo and Mo Xian and slowly said, "I've said before, whoever helps me eliminate the blood zombie heavenly demon emperor will receive a great reward." Mu Chen has done just that. Xian Luo and Mo Xian immediately became anxious. They quickly said, "Ancestor, Mu Chen is a sin child, with many conflicts within our clan. If he were to obtain the eightfold pagoda, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. Should he harbor resentment against the clan, he might use your peerless divine abilities to bring harm to us." Hearing these words, floating pagoda ancestor furrowed his brows slightly and fell into a brief silence. Seeing that his words had an effect, Xian Luo and Mo Xian's eyes flickered with a barely perceptible trace of joy. Floating pagoda ancestor's gaze fixed on the expressionless Mu Chen. After a long pause, he spoke. "Mu Chen, there is something I wish to ask." "Please, senior." Floating pagoda ancestor sighed lightly and said, "If, in the future, you find yourself in conflict with the Fuda clan, what will you do?" Mu Chen fell silent. At this moment, the best answer was clearly to deny the conflict, but he could not bring himself to say so. In the future, due to his mother's reasons, conflict with the Futu ancient clan was inevitable. Moreover, even if he tried to deny it, he knew that it would not pass the sharp eyes of floating pagoda ancestor. Since that was the case, Mu Chen raised his head, locking eyes with floating pagoda ancestor, and spoke slowly and firmly, "No matter what happens, I will follow my heart." No matter what relationship he might have with the Futu ancient clan in the future, he knew he would not be an innocent bystander, nor would he be fearful. He would follow his heart in all things. Beside them, Xian Luo and Mo Xian, seeing that Mu Chen didn't even try to deny it, couldn't conceal the joy on their faces. They looked up, and sure enough, they saw floating pagoda ancestor's eyes fixed tightly on Mu Chen. The latter, however, met his gaze without fear. The two stared at each other for a moment, and then, to Xian Luo and Mo Xian's astonishment, they saw a look of relief suddenly appear on floating pagoda ancestor's face. "Following your heart. Good. Good. A person who can stand up and face the evil in times of crisis. I believe in his heart." Floating pagoda ancestor gave Mu Chen's shoulder a heavy slap. "From now on, you are the heir of the eightfold pagoda." On the side, Xian Luo and Mo Xian's faces turned ashen in an instant.